So we spend so much time thinking about the skin on our faces, but what about the skin on our heads? How can we care for our scalp, and how do we know when there's a problem? I am joined by consultant dermatologist Dr Emma Wedgeworth, who is here to answer all our burning questions. First up, what is the main difference between the skin on our head and the skin on our face?
The scalp skin is modified to actually produce what we call terminal hair, which is the nature of the hair on our heads. And because of the thick layer of hair that's there, often the microbiome, the balance of bacteria and yeast on our scalp is very different than that on our face. The scalp's also slightly modified. It's a bit thicker in certain areas, it's a bit more robust in certain areas, compared to the thinner skin that's on our face, particularly around our eyelids.
And how can we keep our scalps balanced?
So scalp problems are a really common thing that I see in clinic, and it's estimated that about 50% of adults will have some degree of dandruff or dermatitis on their scalp. So many people will be suffering with this, and there are a few different ways that you can actually manage that with over-the-counter products.
So what is the difference between, say, dandruff and dermatitis?
To be honest, Phoebe, it's just a spectrum. So seborrheic dermatitis is the main type of dermatitis that we see on the scalp, and that's normally used for the more severe end of the spectrum. But actually dandruff, just a little bit of flaking, less itching, less redness, is just the milder version of a type of dermatitis, because what happens is that the skin of the scalp becomes a bit inflamed, and the way that the skin cell turns over, that changes, and that's why you get lots of these flaky patches on the scalp.
And is there anything we can actively avoid to stop flaking?
So I think sometimes when people are getting dandruff, they think that actually maybe they're washing their hair too much. But in fact, it's the oil buildup on our scalp that actually really drives a lot of the dandruff. And so actually by washing your hair a little bit more frequently, that can actually be really useful.
So what are some good ways to prevent it?
So there are a number of different products out there which contain ingredients which can be really helpful. So salicylic acid, a BHA we've all heard of for our skin, that can actually be really useful in our scalp because it helps regulate oil production, and it's actually a good what we call keratolytic. It gets rid of that excess keratin, which is what causes the flakes on our scalp. I really like the Revolution salicylic acid shampoo, so that can be really helpful. There are shampoos out there which have antimicrobials. So there's the Philip Kingsley Flaky Dry Scalp shampoo. So good. And that contains something called pyroxenolamine, which is a really nice way of balancing the microbiome. Other ingredients like niacinamide, which is in the All Bay Serene Scalp collection shampoo. So all of those ingredients can be really helpful.
And does our diet play any role?
Our diet has a huge impact on our skin. So with seborrheic dermatitis, the more severe type of dandruff, we know that foods that have a high glycemic index, so anything that releases quite a lot of sugar within our body, that's processed carbs or sugary foods, as well as dairy produce like milk and ice cream, those can all increase the risk of things like seborrheic dermatitis.
And talk me through some of the products that you've got in front of you.
Okay, so I've talked a bit about the types of shampoos that you can use over the counter. Some people who've got more severe changes may also need some form of scalp treatment. So I like the Living Proof scalp treatment. This is the dry scalp treatment. It contains urea. Now, urea is another keratolytic, gets rid of the sort of dead skin cells. And this has got a nice nozzle on it. So what you can do, when you're using scalp treatments, it can be quite hard to actually get it in there. So particularly if you're a woman with long hair, and our scalp is where we actually want to direct our treatments for. So if you've got something that's got a nozzle, what you want to do is section your hair and then apply it directly, really making sure that it's going well into the scalp, and then you massage it into the scalp and then you leave it on. The All Bay does a scalp mist as well, which can be really helpful.
So that is everything you need to know about your scalp, about dermatitis, just all the way through to dandruff, and we hope it helps.